This episode is brought to you by That Gosh Darn Hippie Show. Featuring music from the days of vinyl, it's the grooviest thing to hear on your radio. Greetings, mortals. Welcome to another session of the Infernal Court in Musical Hell. I'm Diva, your judge, jury, executioner, and bizarre animal weapon hybrid. What exactly separates a great animated feature from an awful or merely mediocre one? There's often the same combination of traditional elements and story beats, but what is it that sets some among the pantheon of beloved classics cherished by generations and relegates others to the bargain bin of, oh yeah, I'd almost forgotten about that? To answer that question, let's have a look at our next offender, Quest for Camelot. To understand how this movie winds up among the many also-rans that unsuccessfully challenged for Disney's crown in the late 90s, we should start with the production process. In 1995, Bill Kroyer and Frederick Duchow were slated to direct what was then called The Quest for the Grail, based loosely on the 1976 fantasy novel The King's Demoiselle by Vera Chapman. Given that said novel involves disappointed love, sexual assault, and tragic death, it's safe to say that Quest for the Grail would have already departed significantly from its source material, but studio management demanded even further changes to bring the story more in line with the Disney animated musical formula. Kroyer and the Warner Brothers brass fought over the changes, eventually resulting in the former being fired from the project. Several other key personnel either quit or were fired. The studio's attempt at micromanaging the project resulted in a lot of chaos, resulting in what could be charitably called an uncomfortable work environment. And the results? Well, let's examine the case of Quest for Camelot to discuss those. We start with a pan over CGI mists and waters as the soundtrack goes all Riverdance on us. The underscore in this is by Patrick Doyle, and if it's not Sense and Sensibility, well, at least it's not the Emoji Movie either. Anyway, a knight by the name of Sir Lionel is on his way to Camelot, and he explains to his daughter Kaylee the usual Arthurian backstory beats. Nation in chaos, sword in the stone, Arthur shows up. On Kaylee's birthday, as it happens, Golden Age ushered in.
I'm coming with you, Daddy.
Yes, when you're old enough, Kaylee. I will take you to Camelot, I promise.
Well, here's a parent who's sure to live a long life well beyond the opening credits. Sir Lionel rides into Camelot, accompanied by a song extolling the virtues of the fabled land.
Freedom, peace, honor, goodness.
Goodness? One of your virtues is goodness? No wonder one of the knights has had enough of this nonsense.
Lands will be divided according to each person's needs.
Then I need more than everyone. I wouldn't have supported you all these years if I thought you were right.
This is Sir Ruber, and if you couldn't tell from his angular features, twitchy eye, and Gary Oldman in deranged mode voice, he's going to be our villain. It takes him all of 30 seconds after sitting down at the round table to declare fie on goodness and attack Arthur, and the other knights are spectacularly terrible at defending their king, despite outnumbering Ruber 12-1. Oh, thank Lucifer for vaguely defined magic sword abilities. Ruber escapes and swears revenge. Lionel has died defending his king, and after a funeral and a nice little age cut, we get the adult Kaylee singing her I Want song and sin number 1, My Father's Wings.
This world I'll never see, my dreams that just won't be. This horse is right, with one day's ride we'll have covered more distance than me.
This is the first example of what I think separates great animated features from their imitators, a clearer sense of specificity and context. This song is basically your standard, nondescript I want number. Kaylee wants to get off the farm, see the world, yada yada yada. It doesn't stick in your mind because there's nothing that defines either the song or Kaylee's individual wants and desires. No amount of running through picturesque vistas is going to change that. Also, the lip sync in this movie is really weird.
I will be free.
Back in Camelot, Arthur declares that they're doing pretty good on his freedom and equality initiatives, which means that now is about the time for something to go horribly wrong. Luckily, Merlin's Merlin, it's a type of falcon, look it up, knocks the sword out of the griffin's grasp and into the forest below, where a bunch of grabby vines thwart any retrieval attempt. The alarm goes out that Excalibur has been stolen. Camelot apparently has an elaborate alert system in place, where news reaches Kaylee and her mother, Lady Juliana.
That's a job for the knights, not for a young girl.
But I want to be a knight.
Kaylee, stand still and try on your new dress.
But Mom, I'm a strong female character who rejects girly dress type things. Kaylee is sin number 2, and another example of how this movie never develops an individual identity. The Disney princesses are pretty much marketed as a unit these days, but the reason why they're such beloved characters is because they have their own unique stories and personalities to flesh them out. Compassionate, literate, entrepreneurial, adventurous. Kaylee, on the other hand, is basically a placeholder that says, insert spunky heroine here. She's also not terribly good at it, spending a lot of the movie getting bailed out by other characters, so that doesn't help much. Fortunately, Kaylee doesn't have long to indulge her "I want to do great things, but I'm stuck doing chores and stuff" sulking, as Ruber and his goons attack the family homestead and take Juliana and Kaylee captive. Unfortunately, this results in sin number 3, Ruber's villain song.
I have a plan. It includes you. You, Juliana, will lead me to Camelot, where I will claim all that is mine.
There are certain actors who, despite not being fantastic vocalists, can really sell a villain song. Gary Oldman is not one of them. And he's not helped by the song itself, which is your standard boogity boogity darkness and evil, and proves the villains are trapped in the same vague generalities as the heroes. Not to mention the ill-suited humor.
With this potion I bought from some witches.
Yes, you read that right. The man who would be the bane of Camelot and all it stands for is using the same supplier as Wile E. Coyote. We never learn where or how Ruber got his hands on this potion, only what it does, which is fuse weapons and living things into bizarre metal-organic hybrids. The test subject is a rooster that has been used for weak, pointless comic relief, which is combined with an axe to become Bladebeak, weak, pointless comic relief that can talk. The point of all this is that Ruber wants to use Juliana as a decoy to get him into Camelot, and he's using Kaylee as leverage against her, so of course his minions are keeping a close eye on the girl. At least until they just randomly let go of her and then let her slip away. Fortunately for Ruber, Kaylee squanders her advantage to eavesdrop on him arguing about the missing sword with his pet griffin, meaning that he's able to send his goons to give chase. And here comes the award bait song performed by the queen of award bait herself, Celine Dion. Look, movie, if you're going to set this action scene to a ballad, at least have the decency to mute the sound and put it in slow-mo. Otherwise, there's a teensy tonal disconnect. Kaylee rides up to the Forbidden Forest, where her horse refuses to go because, forbidden. So she proceeds on foot and goes all Snow White's scary adventures for a bit, until a passing stranger accompanied by Merlin's falcon make quick work of the mooks.
You saved my life. Thank you.
Well, anyone can make a mistake.
Oh, I get it. This is where King Arthur sends his unfunny jesters, right?
Oh, great. Is this the part where they banter? I'm beginning to really, really hate bantering. Kaylee's rescuer is Garrett, a blind hermit who is interested in what Kaylee says about needing to search for Excalibur. However, he's not so interested in searching with her, because he's a loner who doesn't need anybody, and wouldn't you know, he has a whole song prepared on that topic.
Like every tree stands on its own, reaching for the sky, I stand alone.
No, movie, I'm stopping you right there. It was one thing to have Steve Perry singing for King Arthur, especially since you have Pierce Brosnan as his speaking voice. I was even willing to stretch far enough to allow for Celine Dion singing for Lady Juliana. But there is no way, and I mean no way, that Brian White's voice is coming out of a character that otherwise sounds like Carrie Elway's. It doesn't work. Either hire singing doubles that remotely sound like your voice cast, or save your big-ticket recording artists for the underscore. This is just orally offensive. Garrett's song doesn't deter Kaylee, and since the Falcon Aiden likes her for some reason, she gets to tag along. This mostly involves Garrett preventing Kaylee from getting herself killed while she remains oblivious.
I've had a tougher time collecting eggs.
Trouble, trouble, trouble. With a capital T.
And that rhymes with P and that stands for pool.
Meanwhile, Bladebeak reports to Ruber that the protagonists are on the trail of the sword. So, congratulations, Ruber. Your most competent henchman thus far is a Hearthstone joke card. So the villains set off in pursuit, while the heroes make their way into Dragon Country.
Is a group of dragons a pack or a flock? Is it a gaggle or a pride? Is it a herd?
Quiet.
Do you hear something?
No. I just want you to be quiet.
Don't look so indignant. I've been praying for you to shut up for the past 15 minutes. And considering what that entails on my part, that's saying something. But their clattering around doesn't attract any awful fire-breathing beasts. Much worse, it attracts the awful comic relief.
Hey, easy with the stick, buddy.
What are you?
Well, frankly, we're the reason cousins shouldn't marry.
This is Devon and Cornwall, a two-headed dragon that gets bullied by the other dragons in the area, ostensibly because they can't fly or breathe fire, but mostly because they're irritating.
Camelot? The restaurants, the theaters?
The waitresses, the actresses.
But at this point, the real dragons show up, as do Ruber and his goons, so everyone beats a hasty retreat while the bad guys just decide to fight each other. You know, Ruber might not be the best villain, but you gotta respect the dragon punching. Now that they're in a safe zone, Devon and Cornwall take the opportunity to sing about their predicament in Sin Number 5, If I Didn't Have You.
Oh, what I could be if there was only me. Oh, what I'd do if I didn't have you.
Like most post-Aladdin animated comic characters, Devon and Cornwall apparently exist for the sole purpose of anachronistic pop culture references, most of them painfully dated. Seriously, even in the 90s, the only kids who knew about Sonny and Cher were the ones who happened to see them in a Scooby-Doo rerun. The song itself is also ungainly and unpleasant, especially when it goes into counterpoint.
I'd be rocking with the dino, swinging with the rhinos. I'd be trying in a mini
In spite of their song, Devon and Cornwall get to come with, mainly because they helped humans and therefore face exile from their homeland. Where, they were isolated and bullied and... Anyway, Garrett wants to make camp, but Kaylee is all, my father Sir Lionel wouldn't let a little darkness stop him, which is all the opening Garrett needs to exposit on his blinded in a tragic accident backstory.
After I lost my sight, your father was the only one who still believed in me. He taught me that a knight's strength comes from his heart.
So after Sir Lionel's death, nobody else was willing to support Garrett, even though Merlin was looking on approvingly and sent his falcon and... Anyway, the next morning Excalibur's scabbard is discovered, but the sword itself is nowhere to be seen, and the size 67 footprints in the area give a pretty good indication why. Kaylee is all, we should have just kept going through the dark danger-infested forest like I wanted, and her whinging results in Garrett getting winged by an arrow. I'm not sure if this counts as Kaylee doing something competent. The tree at least gets a heavy assist on that one. Kaylee gets Garrett to the safety of a cave and some previously established healing plants, and they take some time to engage in Sin Number 6, Looking Through Your Eyes.
Here in the night, I see the sun. Here in the dark,
Look, they're falling in love despite having zero meaningful relationship development. Even Strange Magic, of all things, did this kind of number better because it focused on developing the relationship between the characters, even if it was development that should have happened much earlier in the movie. This song is trying to take the couple to a place they haven't earned yet. After they get their love duet on, the protagonists track down the ogre, allowing Kaylee to be oblivious again.
What's so scary about ogre?
I'll tell you what's scary, that's CGI. Sin number 7 for the awfully rendered ogre, although I shouldn't be surprised as this was around the same time Warner Brothers gave us this. Much futzing about with the ogre and Ruber and his goons later, Kaylee and Garrett grab the sword, leaving Ruber and his griffin to wind up on the wrong side of the ogre. Literally.
Well, Master, at least things can't get any worse.
What a bet.
There's your villain, everyone. An overacting nutjob who lags behind the heroes and is the butt of a fart joke. Kaylee and Garrett approach Camelot, but Garrett up and decides that Kaylee should go on alone, and Camelot is no place for him because... Look, it's the third act and he needs some kind of conflict, okay? Personally, I think he's just using his doubts of self-worth as an excuse to get away from the rest of these losers. While Garrett sings a dark reprise, Kaylee forges ahead on her own and takes how long to get captured? Yeah, that tracks. Ruber uses his magic potion to fuse Excalibur to his arm, an act of villainous hubris that has no way of backfiring, I'm sure. And as ominous storm clouds gather over Camelot for the climax, Ruber uses Lady Juliana to Trojan horse his way into the... city? Castle? Whatever.
It's Lady Juliana! Lower the bridge at once!
The execution of Ruber's plan and the resulting fight is sin number 8 because there's a lot going on here to make you go WTF. First, there's how Kaylee manages to escape her bonds.
Bladebeak, at your service.
Bladebeak is a good guy now? How? And why? Let's face it, you just had this stupid joke character there, so he could do what could normally be accomplished by a convenient jagged bit of metal. Kaylee fights with her guard goon, and while I might be willing to believe that Camelot's guards would give a pass to the ominous cloaked figure on the black warhorse lurking next to Juliana, I would think that they would raise an eyebrow at the giant freaking weapon monster that comes crashing through the bottom of her cart. But somehow they still need Kaylee to tip them off. Finest warriors in the kingdom, right there. Ruber goes after King Arthur, and Kaylee heads to the rescue, assisted by the arriving in the nick of time Garrett with Devon and Cornwall. Oh yeah, Devon and Cornwall can fly and breathe fire now because power of cooperation or some shit. They just used the Superman theme. Is it possible for John Williams to turn in his grave before he's even dead? In the chaos, Garrett leads Kaylee to a secret entrance conveniently located near the stables. Lucky for them, Ruber is the type of villain more interested in gloating than actually getting things done.
You're no king.
You're right. Perhaps I'm more of a god.
Kaylee and Garrett are able to take the fight to the courtyard and trick Ruber into plunging Excalibur into the stone, where it sticks because only the true king. The resulting burst of magic not only disintegrates Ruber, but undoes all the effects of the magic potion and heals everyone. Except Garrett. And yes, I know that would contradict the movie's point of Garrett not being broken, but it's the one that introduced the possibility, and who cares, it's almost over. Kaylee and Garrett are dubbed Knights of the Round Table, which requires Kaylee to wear a wedding dress for some reason, and they ride off to glory and adventure and You can just see the executive meddling fingerprints all throughout Quest for Camelot. So much that happens in the plot, characters, and songs happens because someone with more money than practical knowledge went, "Disney movies have this, so we should too," without even bothering to consider whether it was resulting in an engaging or even coherent story. The backgrounds and some of the underscore are nice, but the characters look off more often than not, and the songs are poorly utilized. Therefore, the Court of Musical Hell orders the following punishments. For being a generally useless third wheel throughout most of the story, Kaylee is condemned to a long road trip with that nerdy guy from Outlaw of Gore. For indulging in way too many villain cliches to very little purpose, Ruber is condemned to an extended meditation retreat. Finally, for the jarring disconnect between the speaking and singing voices, the producers are condemned to always have the sound on their streaming videos 1 second out of sync. So let it be recorded. This session of the Infernal Court in Musical Hell is now adjourned.